challenge every year where early stage companies with cool innovations apply in one of our challenge categories. And we, as a group of utilities and EPRI subject matter experts, come together. We down select to the group of startups that we want to work with, and we run 16-week demonstrations each year. And today you're going to hear from one of these teams, a collaborative team involving ConEdison, EPRI, and Design Interactive, and their product called XRMENTOR, which is what we demonstrated, and ConEdison hosted that demonstration last year. So really excited to have them talk about this demonstration. And it was a fun project, and I think you're gonna enjoy hearing about it. So but before we launch into that, I wanted to turn it over to my colleague Angie Henninger, who's gonna just walk through a few housekeeping items, and then we'll turn it over to Frank Doherty, who is our principal investigator from ConEdison to talk with you more about this. So Angie, I think the floor is yours, and everybody enjoy today's programming.
Yes, welcome to our webcast today. Thank you for attending. We will be recording this, as Amy said, but please feel free to chime in, ask questions if you have any. You can ask them through the chat, bottom left, right-hand side of your computer screen. And you have been muted on entry. You can unmute yourself multiple ways. You can go to the bottom of your screen where it says mute, unmute, and unmute yourself that way. You can go to the participants area and right-click on your name, and there's a little microphone there. You can unclick that. If you have dialed in, you will need to press *6 to unmute yourself on the phone. And it is the double mute that always gets us. So make sure that you're unmuted on the webcast and on your phone. We will be posting this recording to the lab site, and you will receive an email after this letting you know where you can find it and all about the presentation. Thank you, and now I'm going to hand it over to Frank.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. My name is Frank Doherty. I am a project manager for R&D at ConEdison, and I am an R&D enabler, if you will. And I just realized here we are on a title slide, and there's a secret participant who isn't named on the slide. Mm-hmm. And that's Gene Latanzi, who's a manager in our operating group in beautiful downtown Manhattan, in charge of the organization that splices all the underground network cables. And it's really for his workers and for other workers at ConEdison like him that we did this. And I couldn't have done the project without him. I'm actually doing it for him. So you'll hear from him a bit later. Michael Griffith is with Design Interactive, and he has been a key trainer to get our people up to speed on this project, and a key enabler for Design Interactive and XRMENTOR. And I think we make a good team. Michael.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Frank, for that introduction. I'll step through this. A little bit of background on Design Interactive. Design Interactive's been in business for over 20 years. We're a woman-owned small business, headquarters in Orlando, Florida, with, like a lot of companies in technology these days, many remote employees who filter in and out of the office as needed. We've been in, the Design Interactive has been in virtual and augmented reality from the inception of the company, which is really pretty remarkable, because I think even when I joined the company, I didn't really understand that these technologies existed in some form or another for that long. But Kay Stanny, our founder, has been in the space for a long time. She's done a lot of work with the military, private sector, done a ton of work in the Orlando area with some of the theme parks, diagnosing issues with rides that feature virtual and augmented reality, helping them understand why some of their guests are experiencing some negative side effects, if you will, of some of those experiences, and helping them redesign that. So really, really kind of deep knowledge on that stuff, and she's been at it for a very long time. Our flagship product and what we're going to talk about today that we market in the commercial sector is XRMENTOR. It's a platform that enables companies to develop instructor-led and self-guided training in a step-by-step procedure fashion, very simple. The platform is really designed to let subject matter experts be the creators and the distributors of their content to the people that they train. And it's designed to really fill the gap between instructor-led live hands-on training, which we still believe there's a lot of use for in organizations, and traditional e-learning at a distance where you're just looking at a slide deck or maybe a less than engaging third-person view of someone performing something. So XRMENTOR kind of sits right in the middle of those two use cases to deliver more than the traditional e-learning can, but at scale and at a lower cost than what traveling from place to place can do. We support the Microsoft HoloLens 2, which is currently, I would say, the best-in-class mixed reality headset on the market. And for mobile, we support Android and iOS, as those are the two leading platforms. And we also have an HTML web interface to the application, which is accessible through any computer with a browser. Frank, would you like to describe maybe some of the ConEd challenges that led us to working together? Frank, are you on mute?
I've been known to make noises, so I mute myself. Apologies.
Gotcha.
ConEd,
yeah, we're hearing you now.
Good. ConEd is a small utility. I mean, it's a dense area, population of 11 million people or thereabouts between ConEd and our sister utility of O&R. And over 3 million electric customers, over 1 million gas customers, and about 1,000 steam customers as well. We have a service territory of about 2,000 square miles, 600 of which is consolidated Edison, about 300 in New York City and 300 in Westchester County, and about twice as much over in O&R. Even with that small area, traffic can be an issue and travel can be an issue, especially when it's done daily or frequently. And we've encountered issues with training large cohorts of people to keep them updated with new specifications, or more importantly, sometimes revisions to specifications. And we found we have a good training center in Queens, our learning center, but it is a time and cost challenge to get everybody there. And traditional video conferencing really didn't fill the bill. So we looked for something else. It turned out that during COVID, there was a second benefit. That is, we couldn't really put as many students in a classroom as we would have liked, so we needed remote training urgently. And XRMENTOR helped us fill that bill. Michael?
Yeah, thanks, Frank. When we designed out XRMENTOR, we leveraged the see one, do one, teach one methodology of training. If you have any familiarity with that, it's really common in medical practice. So the idea is that in an instructor-led session, a subject matter expert or trainer will demonstrate a performance of hands-on activity to the students, who will then practice on their own and then come back to reconnect to the subject matter expert or trainer to demonstrate proficiency, so that, you know, from that moment forward, they can go forth and just do standard operating procedures. They've confirmed that they have digested the information. And this slide here is showing you a view of what the classroom XR feature of XRMentor looks like. This was shot at ConEd in where's that, Frank? 28th Street, I believe, there in Manhattan.
That's 28th Street.
And we were able to very quickly get a couple of their experts up to speed on using the technology. I think this photograph here is a still from that first time when Matt and I traveled up to Manhattan. So we had a couple of gentlemen up there who performed this task. They're making up a connection to a transformer. They're changing the way they're changing out from an older technology to a new technology in terms of how they do that. And so they're showing an audience the proper way to strip away the old connection, apply the new cold shrink technology connection. And we were able to, in really a day and a half, we had a day-long session with the ConEd folks there in Manhattan. And then day 2, early in the morning, we went out to the shop floor out there in the transportation yard and ran a classroom. And this classroom was viewed right there in the room by people connecting to the cloud service, but we also had people join from the Design Interactive team in Tennessee, Florida, and we also had a gentleman from India join us on the stream, and they could all see exactly what was going on and what the technicians were performing there. On this slide, I'm going to show you, this is not ConEd, but it's the same technology, but I've got a good video here of a different use case. So this is a trucking fleet, and what they're doing here is demonstrating an air disc brake inspection, and I'll roll this video. And so what they've done is they've pulled information directly out of the manual from Bendix. That's a table of information showing you the thickness of a brake pad, when it is, proper thickness, normal wear, time to replace, that kind of thing. And the trainer here is just demonstrating to all of their technicians exactly how to take that measurement. And you can't hear him because I've muted the audio on the slide, but he is discussing with them how to do this properly, when they're supposed to do it. They have an entire class around not only what's the standard operating procedure here, but also what are the decision points where, as the technician, you have to diagnose, do I dig deeper? Do I replace something? That kind of thing. And it was really interesting the way that they decided to run this course with their people. Not exactly, we didn't design the software around this idea, but certainly was facilitated by the software. What they do is they have about a dozen technicians, one per a dozen different locations, who are set up to perform the task themselves. The instructor demonstrates about a third of that process. Then the technicians catch up to him. They reconvene in the ClassroomXR setting to have a conversation about what they've done, what they've seen so far. The instructor then goes back into performance, shows them the next group of steps in the procedure, and so on and so forth. Then they wrap up with a final wrap-up meeting and a survey to make sure that the instructions were understood and that the classroom was enjoyed by all who attended. Frank?
Yes. The why augmented reality training? I gave one of the secrets away. We have a relatively small territory, but I can tell you, if I head out from my office, which is ordinarily in the headquarters building in Lower Manhattan, and want to go to one of the work yards, dispatch yards from our Orange and Rockland utility, it can take me easily an hour and a half or more. And the reverse is true. If they have to head in and come in for training, we do remote training, but when we're trying to train the whole cohort of splicers on an update of the specification or if you will, pay attention to detail. Be sure that when you look at it, the cutbacks are made neat and have the right measurements, because if you put it together, it'll last because it's brand new. But if it's got some cuts or nicks or is the wrong dimension, it'll last a year or two and fail at the absolute wrong time. We wanted to address this to trainees in remote locations. We wanted to be able to live stream and have it a dialogue between the students and the instructor. And importantly, what this provides through the HoloLens 2 is a first person's perspective. Each trainee, all trainees see a better viewpoint than they would even get from an in-person class. Because even if I brought a dozen of them into a room, they really, only the front two or three, get the up close and personal view of what is going on. And candidly, if you're using a torch to soften and remove material, nobody's getting the view that you can get from the HoloLens. The idea here was to train a handful of instructors, and these instructors are journeyman splicers, so they're getting trained in the technology more than anything else, and how to use it so that everybody can watch without getting a headache. But to use it, we train the instructors to use the software, and we bring the knowledge to the students, not the reverse. We'd like to limit the times we bring the students in to the classroom for the knowledge. Michael?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that as well, because maybe I didn't clarify it in the earlier slides, but one of the reasons why ClassroomXR was designed the way that it was around this point right here. So we see a lot of value in an augmented reality procedure that can guide someone through how to do something and provides the information at the time and place of need. So as I step through, that information is presented. It is spatialized, so it's presented where I need the information at a convenient location. However, it would be difficult from an investment, not just in the hardware, but the time to train people on how to use that headset, to manage the mobile device management problem in your IT department with having, dozens or maybe even hundreds of these headsets. It becomes a problem unto itself, and a lot of investment in time and money before you even get started. That's if you assume that the only way to get value out of augmented reality is for each person who's going to extract that value to wear that headset. So the idea around ClassroomXR is to flip the script a little bit and say, we can train a handful of instructors on how to use this technology. It's not difficult. And at a small scale like that, we can probably hit all of them in one session. And then they can go forth and leverage that technology to share their knowledge about topics that they are in fact subject matter experts on at scale across the organization. In terms of creating content in the platform, the slide says it right there, and it's kind of something that I usually tell people. If you can attach files to an email, you already know how to do everything you're going to need to do to use our platform. So the platform is very simple to create a step-by-step procedure. Those could be steps, first do this, then do that. They could be topic areas. You can use it, leverage it that way. And to each step, we can attach PowerPoint slides, pictures. We can also attach videos if it makes sense to do so. Audio files, so if there's a particular sound that people need to be cognizant of, we can record that audio and attach it. And of course, because it's, we're in a mixed reality environment here, we can include 3D CAD models. And so you could do a exploded view, a cutaway, a flow diagram. There are a lot of use cases where that does make sense and is is a great illustration of things, but there are a lot of cases where you can get an awful lot of value out of the technology without having to go into the 3D model space. Our software supports using 3D models in basically two contexts. So I can attach a 3D model to a step, so I can bring that in at that time of need to compare and contrast, or like I said, a cutaway exploded view that might be informative at one step or another during the process, but not for the entirety of the process. Or I can load a CAD model as a virtualized piece of equipment and spatialize the entire procedure around a virtual rendering of that piece of equipment so that I can experience and or practice that procedure without having a live asset. And it's easy to, using the software, move that procedure from not only one piece of equipment to another, but also from virtual equipment to physical assets. This slide kind of gives us an overview of that creation process and what the web portal looks like in the software. So an author, someone with an author account simply logs in, goes to the procedures tab in the software, click edit. Very simple text fields here. The attachments are all shown there. This is all hosted in the cloud, but all of this content is downloadable later. So someone else in the organization could download a piece of content. So what we might do here is, to step one, attach an entire service manual. You wouldn't want to train off of a service manual. That's not really a training aid, but as a training aid, as a good training aid, you might attach one. And you can see from this video, just simply click add attachment, file browse, and bring it in. In one of the videos there, you saw a couple of notes with the orange banner on top. Creating that is very simple. Just click create note, create that in the platform. Very easy to use software. You know, anyone who uses email on a day-to-day basis has all of the skills. You can drag and drop to reorder steps, etc. And Frank,
yep. So we saw this, heard about it on the Incubate Energy Labs challenge, if you will, and it sounded interesting. It's something that I've been dabbling in or reading about for years, decades, in fact. But I think we're at the point now, or I thought we were at the point now, we could do something more. So we wanted to explore a new software tool to help see if it works at ConEd, this augmented remote training. Gene thought it was a good idea. And at that point, you know, we decided we're definitely going to try it. And I'll let Gene take it from there.
So, good day, everybody. This is Gene Latanzi with ConEdison here in Manhattan, in New York. And just again, thank you for the opportunity, you know, to Michael and to Matt and to Frank and to the rest of the team here. So the beauty of this software, leveraging the Microsoft HoloLens 2 and putting it in the hands of the SMEs, right? The subject matter experts, the folks that are actually performing the work. Next slide, please. So the overall scope of this project, how this basically was kicked off, and Michael had touched upon it, right? So Design Interactive, and Michael and Matt came to Manhattan here in New York at West 28th Street, right off the West Side Highway. If those of you familiar with the skyline, it's the Lower West Side where you're seeing the skyscrapers going up day after day. So we basically had a 2-day session here with Michael and Matt, showing our distribution splicers, our underground mentors, as we call them, folks that have 20+ years in splicing primary and secondary cable. When I say primary cable, I'm talking about 13,000 volts of electricity, performed de-energized, and then performing live work on secondary cable, 120, 208 voltage, secondary voltage, in our underground distribution structures every day in the challenge that is Manhattan. So the thought process there was by educating our splicers, our mentors, the subject matter experts in how to use this technology, we could leverage their experiences, their know-how, the tricks of the trade, if you will, and have them teach other splicers, new types of technology, new splices that we're introducing into our system. But also here in ConEdison, we're also undergoing a change where, with a hiring effort that's underway and introducing new employees into the line of work that we do here, and obviously having to train them the right way, this provided us with an opportunity to offer a knowledge transfer with a first person perspective, right? Because after all, I think we all could agree that in today's times and in today's society, and really just what the opportunity pandemic presented us was, we're visual based learners, but how do we leverage technology to really push forward by providing, that in-person training experience, but from a remote location. So the idea was having two instructors, our splicers, train other members of the organization, whether that was in person or remote. Michael had touched on how when we were conducting our classes, we had people attending from Orlando, New York, India. And then in Manhattan, we're split up in three separate districts, if you will. The lower portion of Manhattan, to the midsection, Times Square area, to the Upper East Side, and where we border the Bronx. So we had people attending, people that were splicers, people that were new employees. And really the idea was, as you see in the slide here, it says product training, demonstration, evaluation. The key takeaway here is that it was happening all at the same time. And what I mean by that was we were conducting dry runs while we had people attending our sessions, while the splicers were learning the technology, picking Mike's brain about, what's some best practices and things to, consider when, moving their head while they're, showing someone the cutbacks on a splice. And then really in the same time, getting the feedback. Next slide, please. So some of the feedback and some of the thoughts that we took into consideration was, the time, right? How long is it going to take us to develop a trainer, an instructor from a splicer, right? And the beauty to that is our splicers, they are training someone every day, whether it's a newer employee or a new supervisor or someone that's joining the organization to get that learning experience. But what we noticed, it took about a day and a half for our instructors really to get a good feel. And again, that's a day and a half with Michael and Matt from Design Interactive. Really, I don't want to say holding our hand, but really, they guided us in the right direction, to put it lightly, right? And I greatly appreciated at that part as well. And the perspective from the folks at Design Interactive was really to share with us what are the best practices, so we could leverage them and not make the mistakes that we potentially would have made. And obviously, the mistakes that we're trying to avoid is we want to make sure that what someone is observing through the XRMENTOR software from a remote location is the visual that we want them to see. We want them to see what the splicer sees as they were making this splice. So part of this was creating the lesson plan, which you see here in this image. Michael touched on it. Whatever you could attach in an email, you could add to the lesson plan. We found out that working in PowerPoint, Microsoft PowerPoint, we were able to basically create our lesson plan, and basically each slide we separated so that way it was visually aesthetic to the user, as well as those that were conducting the class. And overall, just feedback from the splicers and the mentors, and ultimately became instructors in this augmented reality platform. It was easy to use. They really liked the idea of being able to use their personal phones to upload the XRMENTOR application and share photos from the field. We were going over a cold shrink splice, a termination point that exists on our network distribution transformers. So the two gentlemen, Thomas Mooney, Tom Pastore, two distribution splicers, they actually showed field locations where they were working, things they look out for, and things that we want our users, our new splicers, new employees, and everyone in our organization to be aware of, right? Identify the hazards before they identify themselves to you. Next slide, please. So in the visual here, you'll actually see in Tom Mooney, one of our distribution splicers, actually shrinking a component to the splice, and this visual is showing you what it looks like when the flame is touching that material. But the other piece to this, no worries. But also what we gained perspective was on, the tricks of the trade, right? So when Tom was breaking down something, he would talk about body positioning. the type of knife he's using, why he's using the specific knife he's using, and why he's angling his body end of the knife away from a splice component, right? Not to cause damage. How he was using the flame to, to shrink a component or break down a component, and giving that instruction to show the distance from where that torch body was to where the cable was, to show people this is the distance that you need to not compromise the integrity of the components that you're salvaging, so to speak. So literally the 2 days of training was really 2 days of training for them, for myself, for Frank, for those that were watching this as we were doing it in our facility here at West 28th Street. We were able to train about 16 employees remotely, and that number really scaled up and down. 16 is not a dead fast number. You could scale that as much as you want. This technology gives you that ability. And the cool feature here is while they were conducting the class, our class attendees, they were able to type in a question that Tom were able to see in the Microsoft HoloLens right in plain view sight. And really, this was the first time that they were wearing a Microsoft HoloLens, and I think at some point while they were talking about this with their kids, teenagers, they were like, oh, that sounds great. As we showed this technology to newer employees here, the first question I got was, does every splicer get one of those? So, it definitely, we definitely have the attention of our employees, and really that's what we want, because this is a learning experience. Next slide, please. So some of the things to consider, and again, when you're undergoing a pilot like this, there are things you're going to come across, address in real time, and things, takeaways, right? What would you like to tweak as you move forward? So we saw that the time, really about, I would say, 2 weeks of doing dry runs, working on the content, because as you do in your first dry run, if you will, in the first few days, the content that you set aside when you're looking at it through the Microsoft HoloLens, it looks clear, but when someone's viewing it from, say, a laptop, it's not as clear. You have to increase the font size. Certain pictures, you want to make sure you have the right lighting when you're taking them from the field. But overall, how easily they grasp this concept, right? It's the learning curve is steep, but it's one that is very quick to overcome. And again, I think the takeaway here was we were able to give a first-person perspective learning experience to all types of attendees, and their experience is that of the actual distribution splicer that's in the manhole that is actually working on this cable in those conditions from afar. So I'm going to hand it off to Michael just to go over some of the licensing and the hardware that is acquired. Michael?
Sure. Thanks, Gene. Yeah, I just wanted to add to what you were talking about. First of all, to say that Tom were really amazing, and so you guys at ConEd really chose a couple of really great people to work with. They were fantastic all the way through the project. And when Matt and I showed up in Manhattan to do that training and onboarding, you didn't mention it, but these guys they only had a general idea of what they had been signed up for and what they were there for. They'd never seen a HoloLens before in their life. And the next day we had them live streaming. So I will remember that for a long time in terms of a win that we had there, that it really did prove out that it's pretty easy to get someone ramped up. So anyway, I just wanted to add that. But in terms of licensing on the platform, XRMENTOR is sold as software as a service with an annual license for the software, and it's based on a tiered approach, based on the number of total users that'll be in the system, whether those users be simply viewers of content or authors. We don't distinguish between the two. However, with that subscription, there's no limitations on the use of any of the features. All of the features of XRMENTOR are available in a sort of an all-you-can-eat kind of situation. The software does require one HoloLens 2 to get the full value of the software. We have recently added the feature in ClassroomXR to not only share from the HoloLens, but also the desktop. So if you wanted to start with a couple of slides, just, demonstrated from your laptop, you could do that. You can also connect a camera, so you could do a few minutes of third-person view. That might make sense in some classrooms, and then hit the stream and go first-person perspective, which is really what the software was designed to support. So we would recommend for any company of any size to start out with at least one, preferably two. It gives you not only a hardware backup, but also gives you the ability to at least onboard two subject matter experts and being familiar with the technology, and to do it in parallel. They can both practice at the same time, type of thing. And I think we had this teed up for you, Gene.
Yep. Thank you, Mike. So some of the lessons learned and conclusions, ultimately, you want to give your instructors, time with the Microsoft HoloLens, with Design Interactive, the team, just learning the scope, right? Learning those best practices. That took about 40 to 80 hours. As mentioned, the learning curve. Look, it's new technology that you're introducing to the reality of it is some folks that don't know what a Microsoft HoloLens is, but they're familiar with the concept, right? And I think once Tom and Tom saw the Microsoft HoloLens, saw some video demonstrations that Mike and Matt had shared with us, their excitement just increased. It doesn't require an expert instructor, but obviously the people that you're going to have teaching this material or the courses of your choosing, they're going to be the subject matter experts. They're going to be the ones that you would want someone else learning from, right? You want it to be a quality and a valued experience for both parties. And then another piece here is, and something we'll always continue to work through as we introduce more and more technology into the mix, is have your IT departments involved right out the gate, right from day one. You never know what type of cybersecurity network requirements may lie, or that you might find out as you're working through that. I know we had some challenges that we worked through. And really you want a good connection, because ultimately you're streaming a live video feed with audio, and you want everything to be in real time. That's the beauty of what we're doing here. Just conclusions. I mean, the feedback that we got was, can we use this on another type of splice? Can we use this instead of doing it with the underground? Can we try this with the overhead? So and word got out quick that we were doing this. There were other groups leveraging the Microsoft HoloLens, but we were the ones working with Mike and Matt and Frank, and really just the way we went about things, including a lot of departments here in ConEdison. We got a lot of positive feedback and a lot of interested parties. I think it goes without saying, all right, just looking at the demonstration that Mike had shared with the mechanic demonstrating how to replace the brake pads on that vehicle, that first person perspective is priceless. It's the third person video is not going to compare. When you're able to demonstrate a specification or a procedure with that first person perspective, giving the person that's learning about that procedure or that work practice the opportunity to ask questions in real time and get their answers in real time, that's in a sense is positive reinforcement, right? It encourages the learner to want to ask questions and to verify that they know what they're learning. And again, that just ties into the last bullet there, right? Promises to increase trainee throughput. That first person perspective is a win-win for everybody. Next slide, please. So Mike, I think at this point, you wanted to review some questions that came up during the meeting.
Yeah, these are some frequently asked questions. I guess maybe Angie, I'll take your suggestion here. Do we want to pause and ask if people have some questions? This is an awful lot of text for me to just read through, and I know that the attendees will.
Yeah.
Well,
why don't we pause and take some questions from the group? I
think that's good.
Here. Yeah.
This is Frank Doherty. I do think it would be good to check that they're alive and well, because I haven't heard anything. That is acceptable too.
We also have emojis if you prefer to react that way.
Any questions from the group? Feel free to use chat, feel free to raise your hand or just unmute yourself and pipe in. Okay.
Well, I'll add something here, or maybe Gene, I'll suggest that you add where we might take this for a next step, as opposed to training a classroom, using it for live peer knowledge sharing from work locations.
Yeah, no, Frank, thank you. So while we were going through this pilot, what would come up from time to time is, we're visiting. There's a lot of construction going on in Manhattan, and a lot of new developments, and also working with the city as far as relocating their facilities, and that has an impact on our infrastructure. So a lot of times, our supervisors, myself and our field technical specialist or a planner, as some organizations would refer them to, they're out on locations. They're meeting with city officials or representatives of construction departments, and they're reviewing in progress construction locations, and at times, this technology, it gives you the opportunity to really share that viewpoint of what's going on that location with, say, someone like myself that may be in the office at that moment in time, or someone that's planning the work behind the scenes in a more administrative role. You're able to give them that viewpoint to where they're able to say, oh, okay, you know what, we could start this project on this side of the street, or this portion of the road, and then we're going to work it, not as the layout has it drawn out. We're actually gonna work in a different path to completing that job, and you're making those decisions in real time while having those conversations with your customers, right? So you think about the engagement there, and the level of inclusion that now you're discussing how you're going to meet your customers' expectations, provide them with that level of service that they've expected and they pay for, to be honest, and you're able to tell them based on with the other members of your team chiming in, basically saying, this is the latest revision to that layout. This is how we're going to go about that. Can they provide us access during these days or during this shift, since we do work 24/7 here in New York, depending on the scope of work and the customers that we're supporting. So I think that opportunity really excites a lot of folks here. And as I mentioned earlier, once word got out of what we're trying to achieve, or what we were able to achieve, I should say, others are interested in leveraging this technology to train their folks and really give that different perspective. We have people that are using this technology in a power plant to demonstrate where a transformer or a new piece of equipment would be located, in a station, and really giving the people that are watching through the XRMENTOR software the perspective to actually see it visually and say, oh, okay, that makes sense. We have sufficient egress there. We can make the proper connections, or any additional installations that need to take place. This is not going to jeopardize that plan. So it really gives that viewpoint for all parties involved.
Yeah, that's great additional info. I'm just looking forward in the near future. There's quite a few companies that have other devices already on the market. There's Vuzix and RealWear are in the space, although their technology is a little bit more like a Google Glass, so not a full mixed reality solution. But the rumors have been pretty hot on Apple maybe coming to market with something, although I suspect that will be more consumer oriented and not as commercially oriented as the Microsoft HoloLens is. I didn't mention it in the presentation, but the Microsoft HoloLens 2, the outer shield of the glasses does qualify as safety glasses, and there is a version that can be purchased that's integrated into a hard hat. So it is definitely oriented to that. But I'm looking forward to some competition in the space in terms of hardware. Right now, Microsoft's kind of out on their own at the forefront of this technology. But as other people enter the space, like everything else, competition drives innovation, and we could see capabilities rise and prices fall. And our Design Interactive has developed XRMENTOR to work on the Microsoft HoloLens as the mixed reality headset because it is the premier one on the market. However, when something else compelling comes around, our team is not married to that platform at all, and we'll be able to quickly deploy on another platform using our common code base. So I'm excited to see what happens in that space because anything that improves the technology and adds some competition to the hardware space is going to, I think, be really exciting and great.
Thank you. Angie, I would say that's about it.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending. We'll close out today's call, and you should receive an email from us by early next week. Thank you for attending.
Thanks all.
Thank
Well
you.
done.
Thank you so much, everyone.